The apples of love and the apple of discord. Atalanta, like Artemis, loved no men, though many fell in love with her because she was so graceful when she ran. When she was born, her father had cruelly abandoned her in the wilderness, for he had hoped for a son. But she did not perish, for a she-bear heard her cries and carried her gently to her den, nursed her, and raised her with her cubs. Years later, an astonished huntsman saw a girl racing with wild beasts through the woods. He caught her in a snare and brought her home with him. Soon she learned to talk and act like a human, and her foster father was very proud of her fleetness of foot. He took her to athletic games, and she won all the races. Her fame spread over Greece, and now her real father proudly reclaimed her as his long-lost daughter. He was a king, and a king's daughter could not be allowed to run about unmarried, so he began to search for a suitable husband for her. But Atalanta did not want a husband. To be left in peace, she said she would only marry a man who could beat her in a running race. However, anyone who raced her and lost would forfeit his life. That would scare all suitors away, she thought, but she was so lovely that many suitors tried their luck anyway, and they all lost their lives. One day, a young prince whose name was Melanion came to court her. He was smarter than the others. He knew that he could not outrun Atalanta, so he sacrificed to Aphrodite and prayed for her help. The goddess of love, who wanted to see all pretty girls married, gave Melanion 3 golden apples and told him what to do. When the race began, Atalanta, certain that she would win, let Melanion have a head start. When she caught up with him, Melanion threw a golden apple at her feet. It glittered so beautifully that she had to stop and pick it up. Soon she overtook him again, and Melanion threw the second apple, this time a bit farther away. She left the track and made a dash for the apple. When again Melanion heard her light footsteps behind him, he threw the third apple far into the bushes. Atalanta just had to have that one too, and before she found it, Melanion had crossed the finish line. So he had won her, and they were married, and Atalanta treasured her golden apples and loved her clever husband dearly. They lived happily for many years, and never forgot to honor Aphrodite, who had brought them together. But they did not show proper respect to Zeus, and he changed them into a pair of lions for punishment. For the rest of their lives, they ran around as lions, hunting side by side through the woods. Peleus, a young king of Thessaly, had Atalanta to thank for his life, for it was he who had stumbled in front of the Caledonian boar when she stopped it with her arrow. He had also been one of the Argonauts and was one of the greatest athletes in Greece, a favorite of the gods. Zeus gave him a beautiful Nereid, Thetis, for his bride, and all the gods came to the wedding. Only Eris, the spirit of strife, had not been invited. She was furious, and while everybody was making merry, she threw a golden apple among the guests and shouted, "The fairest of the goddesses shall have it." Hera, Aphrodite, and Athena rushed to pick it up, each one thinking herself the fairest. It was not a golden apple of love that Eris had thrown, but the apple of discord, and the 3 goddesses began to quarrel about who should have it. The wedding broke up on a sour note, and in heated dispute the goddesses retired to high Olympus. Thetis, the bride, was not happy at being married to a mortal, for her children would not be immortal, as she was. No god had dared to marry her, for an oracle had predicted that she would bear her husband a son who would become greater than his father. Peleus, of course, thought himself the most fortunate of men. In time, Thetis bore her husband many children. Trying to make them immortal, she held them over sacred fire to burn away their mortality, but none survived the ordeal. At last, she gave birth to a boy sturdier than the others. He withstood the fire, and she had almost succeeded in making him immortal when Peleus rushed into her room and snatched the child away. Thetis was so hurt and disappointed that she went back to the sea and never returned. The little boy was brought up by Chiron, a wise centaur, and he grew to be the greatest warrior that Greece has ever known. He was invulnerable except for his heel, by which his mother held him over the fire. His name was Achilles. Meanwhile, discord reigned on Olympus. three goddesses quarreled, and none of the gods dared to say which of them was the fairest. One day, as Zeus looked down on earth, his eyes fell on Paris, a prince of Troy. He was overwhelmingly handsome, as were most men in the royal house of Troy. His grand-uncle, Ganymede, was such a good-looking boy that Zeus, in the shape of an eagle, had stolen him from his father and carried him to Olympus to be his cupbearer. Anchises, another relative of Paris, was so exceedingly handsome that Aphrodite herself fell in love with him. She took on the shape of a princess so she could marry him and bore him a son whose name was Aeneas. But Paris outshone all his relatives, and someone as handsome as he must be the best judge of beauty, thought Zeus. He told Hermes to lead the three goddesses down to Mount Ida near Troy, where Paris was herding the royal sheep and cows, and let Paris judge between them. Paris stared in speechless wonder when the three radiant goddesses appeared before him. Hermes gave him the golden apple and told him to award it to the most beautiful of them. "Give it to me," said white-armed Hera, "and all of Asia shall be your kingdom." "Choose me," said gray-eyed Athena, "and you shall be the wisest of men. The most beautiful woman on earth shall be yours if you give me the apple," said Aphrodite. Paris was young and loved beauty more than power or wisdom, and so he gave the apple to Aphrodite. Aphrodite happily took the golden apple and did not give it a thought that the most beautiful woman on earth, Helen, queen of Sparta, already had a husband.
The Trojan War, Part 1. An epic poem is a long narrative that relates the deeds of heroes. Many of the stories of the Trojan War were compiled in an epic poem called the Iliad by the author Homer. They are among the oldest stories in literature. While these tales are clearly mythological, historians believe there really was a Trojan War and that it took place about 1200 BC, near the coast of Turkey. It might have been a trade war between different groups of Greek-speaking people for control of waters leading into the Black Sea. The Apple of Discord. The struggle began when Eris, goddess of discord and quarreling, was not invited to the wedding of hero Peleus and the sea nymph Thetis. Eris threw among the revelers a golden apple inscribed, "For the fairest." It rolled right up to where three goddesses were sitting, Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite. Of course, each goddess claimed it. Zeus refused to be the judge of this Olympian beauty contest. He knew no matter how he decided, he would never hear the end of it from the others. He told the goddesses to have Hermes escort them to a mountain near Troy, where Paris, a son of King Priam, was watching sheep. The king had sent him away because he had been warned someday this boy would bring grief and ruin on his country. Paris was supposed to be a good judge of feminine beauty. The goddesses agreed. Zeus warned them to abide by Paris' choice, however it went. Hermes escorted them to the high pastures of Troy, where the shepherd prince watched his flocks. Each goddess promised Paris something if he would favor her. Hera offered him kingly power. Athena promised wisdom and glory in war, but Aphrodite, the love goddess, offered him the most beautiful woman in the world for his wife. Paris cared nothing for power and glory, and least of all wisdom. He was young and shallow-minded. He awarded the golden apple to Aphrodite. Helen of Sparta. The most beautiful woman in the world, Helen of Sparta, was the daughter of Zeus and Princess Leda. Of course, every prince in Greece wanted to marry her. Her mother's new husband, King Tyndareus of Sparta, had to choose among the suitors. He was afraid that whoever he chose would have to fight for Helen against all the rest. To prevent this, he made them all take an oath that they would accept his decision and support the cause of Helen's husband, and if any wrong were committed against him because of this marriage. The suitors, each thinking he might be the one chosen, swore the oath and promised solemnly to punish any man who interfered with the marriage. Tyndareus then chose Menelaus, brother of Agamemnon, king of Mycenae, and made Menelaus a king of Sparta too. Meanwhile, Aphrodite led Paris directly to Sparta. Menelaus and Helen received the Trojan prince graciously. They trusted him so completely that Menelaus went off on an expedition to Crete, leaving his wife to entertain their guest. The ties between host and guest among the Greeks were sacred, but Paris violated that trust. With the help of Aphrodite, who turned her arts on Helen and made her fall madly in love with the boy. When Menelaus got back, he found his guest gone and his wife with him. Here the oath and the pact of the suitors went into effect. The brother of the injured husband, King Agamemnon of Mycenae, as commander-in-chief, was able to rally near all the Greek kings to bring Helen back.
The Golden Apple of Discord, a Greek myth. Once upon a time, long ago, Queen Hecuba of Troy had a dream. The queen was pregnant at the time, eagerly awaiting the birth of her first child. But one night she dreamed she gave birth to a flaming torch. When she told her husband, King Priam, he became worried and called upon his eldest son, Echius, the seer, to tell him the meaning. "Your newborn son will be the downfall of Troy," Echius said. "He must be killed to save our people." And so when the baby boy named Paris was born, Hecuba and Priam looked into his eyes and fought against their fears. They knew they must destroy him, but they could not bear to do it. King Priam called upon his chief herdsman, Agelaus, to do the deed. Agelaus carried the baby to desolate Mount Ida. Once there, he shrank from the task. He could not kill this baby, and so he left tiny Paris there, alone, in the wilderness, certain to perish. But that night a bear came upon the baby and took pity on him. She kept him safe through the night. In the morning, when Agelaus returned for the body, he found the boy alive and safe. He took this as a sign. The boy was meant to live. And so, in secret, Agelaus took Paris to his home to rear the boy as his own son. Paris grew up to be a regal young man, beautiful, intelligent, and wise, beloved by women and men alike. He often pitted his prize bull against the bulls of other men. One day he offered a challenge. His bull would fight anyone's bull to a battle. The winner would receive a golden crown. When Ares, the god of war, heard this, he transformed himself into a bull and accepted the challenge. Naturally, Ares easily won, and Paris proved how fair he was when he readily awarded Ares the crown. It was in this way that the gods came to understand that Paris was a man who kept his word, and this is how he came to be the judge for one of the most extraordinary contests ever waged. It happened this way. On Olympus, home of the gods, Zeus planned a wedding feast for the sea nymph Thetis and her beloved, the mortal Peleus. Zeus invited all the gods and goddesses but one, Eris. This is because wherever Eris, the goddess of discord, went, she brought only chaos and misery. But Eris learned of the feast, and she was furious. In the midst of the wedding merriment, she stormed into the great hall and flung a golden apple into the crowd. The apple was inscribed with the word Callisti, meaning for the fairest. Naturally, every goddess rushed forward to claim the fruit. Soon they were arguing and fighting over the apple, but by the end of this chaotic battle, only 3 goddesses remained: Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty, Athena, the goddess of wisdom and war, and Hera, Zeus's wife, the goddess of women and marriage. The 3 goddesses turned to Zeus and said, "You must choose who gets the golden apple. Which of us is fairest of all?" Zeus understood that no matter which woman he selected, the other 2 would create terrible grief, and so he decreed that the matter would be decided by the fairest judge in the land. "The shepherd Paris of Troy will select the fairest goddess," Zeus proclaimed. Zeus instructed his son, Hermes the messenger, to lead the goddesses to Mount Ida. When Hermes explained the task, Paris could not refuse. No one refused a command from Zeus. And so he stood before the goddesses, carefully inspecting each one, wondering how he could possibly decide. The goddesses began to offer bribes. "I can make you king of Europe and Asia," Hera said. "Select me, and you will be among the most powerful men on earth." Athena strode forward next. "I will give you wisdom, and I shall make you the finest warrior who ever lived." Last to step forward was Aphrodite. She had enhanced her charms with flowers strewn through her hair. She gazed at the handsome young man. "Paris," she said, "I offer you the most enticing gift of all. I offer you love. Helen of Sparta, the most beautiful mortal woman in the world, will fall in love with you. I will make certain she cannot resist your charms." Helen was famous for her great beauty, and for many years she had suitors of extraordinary ability, men of strength and wisdom and power. It was her father, Tyndareus, who at last chose her husband, King Menelaus of Sparta. When Helen and Menelaus married, Tyndareus extracted a promise from all those former suitors, demanding that they protect and defend his daughter's marriage to King Menelaus forever. Each of the suitors vowed they would always defend this marriage. But there on Mount Ida, Paris could not resist Aphrodite's offer. He handed Eris's golden apple to her. And when he raided the house of King Menelaus and stole Helen away to Troy, he received Aphrodite's gift of Helen's love. The moment King Menelaus discovered his queen was gone, he called upon all her former suitors. Every one stepped forward and vowed to return Helen to Sparta, no matter what that took. The land of Troy would be destroyed. And so it was all because of Eris and that golden apple that the long and terrible Trojan War began.